Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Fireworks in the Real World. This week I'm going to look at wireframing and using Fireworks as your favourite wireframing tool. Obviously it isn't a wireframing tool, but Fireworks is very flexible, as I keep saying, and it has a lot of built-in features that will help you get there. Now there are many free and very cheap wireframing tools, both on the web and in native applications for Mac and PC. And one thing about using Fireworks is you don't have to learn new interfaces and new tools. It's part of your workflow within Fireworks, and your wireframe can become a prototype, a kind of more high fidelity prototype, and then become a basis for the actual design work without leaving the package. So you're kind of reusing what you've done, and it's a kind of workflow that has worked well for me. Now it's not as fast as other tools in many ways, but there's a lot of stuff in here you can use to get you going pretty quickly. Good libraries and good tools. It doesn't do the wiggly output, the kind of sketchy look quite so well. You can use Comic Sans though if you really want to. So there are many ways to get started with making our new wireframe. We can just create a new document. So if we're going to make a 960 pixel wide one, for example, we'd start with about that, 1160 pixels wide. And we could start putting on guides. You can double click the guides after you've dragged them on and just put them in the right place. So we can put one there, one there. So we can actually work to the right pixel dimensions, which is, I find, quite useful to give you a better idea of what's actually going to fit on a page. Sometimes in wireframing tools it's just quite tempting to just start pulling things on really quickly, and you kind of lose track of what the actual size of the page is and what the size of elements really are. So I find it useful to do it pretty much at pixel size. And let's for a moment forget that responsive design exists, and we're gonna make the assumption that we're gonna just wireframe a 960 pixel wide screen to get going. Another way to get started is by using one of the actual built-in templates, which are very useful. So if you do new from template, second option on the file menu, we get some default library components. I think this was new from CS5. So there's various useful things in here. So there's some basic templates for mobile. There's some pre-built web stuff which you might want to have a look at, but I find the most useful one is, even though there's wireframes on the list, these are actually wireframes which are ready built, which might be worth looking at, and you might be able to take a few things from those. But grid systems I find the most useful. So if we stick to a 960 grid, we can preview it. Gives us a little idea of the different column formats. A little preview. So if we open that, there we go. We've now got a 960 grid wide. What's that one? 24 columns. We can actually swap it here. So I want 16 columns. So that gives you a pretty good way to get started with no effort at all. Now there are also some really good extensions, like plugins for Fireworks, which will create grid systems for you. One of those is made by a guy called John Dunning at johndunning.com. He makes a really good grid extension. He makes lots of good extensions. And this allows you to kind of quickly create your own grid system, and it will add all the guides and grid and everything else that you want it to by whatever you select here. Now I've got a grid over a grid, which is really confusing, but you get the idea. So it basically creates layers of elements which you can use to set up your grid. But let's just use the built-in template to get going. Now you'll see it's created a series of folders which are all locked. So I'm not going to touch those. I'm going to leave those as they are, and we'll get going with a new folder for all of our stuff. Now another great feature of Fireworks is the built-in common library of objects. Now in here you'll find all kinds of helpful stuff, from buttons, cursors, lots of HTML components. There is a whole set of iPhone interface elements. So if you were wireframing for an iPhone, very big iPhone, there's all the kind of preset interface elements in here to get you going. There's also well, there's Windows 7 as well, which could be useful. So you can either drag them from the library or the top preview window there. Now there's also a lot of Windows specific and Mac specific interface elements that will mimic how things look on the two different operating systems. And useful for us at the moment is one that's just simply called Wireframe. So lots of useful elements in here, like accordions, quick ideas on comments and that kind of thing. They don't allow too much customization, but you can. These are all built-in symbols, so you can double click on them, which takes you into the symbol, and then you can edit the text. But they don't scale quite as nicely as other tools, other wireframing tools, which allow you to just stretch things, and they make life really easy. But they can give you somewhere to get started. Quite often though, I must admit, I simply use the very simple rectangle and text tool, and that's quite enough, unless there are some other pre-built components I don't want to do. But usually I find just drawing the things, because this is supposed to be very rough, I might just put a big box that says comments rather than having a component that looks like a load of comments, keeping it as simple as possible. So let's create our wireframe using just the default rectangle tool and text tool. So these snapping to the guides, should make sure that in the view menu guides, that's all ticked. So we should be locking to the guides, which will just make positioning easier. So let's just do this really quickly. I usually just stick to shades of grey. Pete's Pet Parlour. So we're going to make a pet shop site. It's always a common demo site, isn't it? A pet shop. I guess they're nice and simple. So I might speed this up, although there might be something in here as I'm going along that might be useful. So I'll just try and do it as quickly as possible. So, okay, well, Alt is quite useful. If you press Alt and just drag, you can just replicate things. So let's just create the menu like that. So we have home, animals, accessories. I'm not going to worry about the spacing just yet. Food. Okay, let's just have that many about us. So if I just click and drag those, and then do align, sorry. Make sure they're aligned vertically, and I can distribute the widths. Although I should move that one over there. Now if I distribute widths, they all spread out equally, so that's quite nice. I'm actually going to turn those guides off because I don't want to see them. Can I turn the guides off? Oh, there we go. It's Control or Apple : or just on the view menu. So they're not part of the actual layers of grids. They're an overlay of the guides themselves. So I've turned those off because they're appearing over the top of my wireframe. So I'm going to I'll just use save me drawing a box. I'll use a box which has got a search component in there, and because this is an e-commerce site, I'm just going to stick some text up here. View. Okay, let's put basket. So pretend there's 2 items in the basket. Check out. So that might be the kind of thing you have up in the kind of top area of the site. Let's just make it a bit smaller using the properties panel. There we go. So that looks like a kind of header we might want to start using. So we've got our header. Now we're going to end up with a multi-page wireframe here. We're going to do a home page, a landing page, product listing page, probably a product detail, checkout, the kind of standard pages you might expect in a small e-commerce site. So we're going to use the pages of our Fireworks to help make the process easier rather than having separate files, and we'll be able to link between them as well. So let's just get rid of these other pages, which were, just going to delete those, which were the other column layouts. Call this home. Now, what I want to do, first of all, is I want to make this header into a reusable symbol. Now, there's lots of ways of sharing stuff across pages. You can share layers, you can do set master pages. Must admit, I just like using symbols themselves. I'm going to convert that to a symbol and call it header. You have other options here for animations of buttons. Very, very familiar if you've used Flash. This is the same kind of concept. We won't worry about 9 slice scaling at the moment, or we can put it in the common library, the thing we were looking at earlier. But let's not do that at the moment. Let's just create a header. Now, if we duplicate the page, so if we just set up a few pages, I'm going to duplicate it each time because I want those guides in there and the header. Call it listing. So because this is a symbol and it's in all those pages, if I now update something in the header symbol, I might change the name. So when you double click into the symbol, you go into a kind of editing mode. Again, very, very familiar to anyone who uses Flash. You can see here the kind of breadcrumbs of what you've done. So I go back to where I was. Now we'll notice that header, because it's in each of the pages and it's always related, it will update everywhere. So I found that really useful. That's the kind of thing that Axure does as well, with its kind of master components, which I find to be really, really useful, because I'm terrible at keeping things consistent and synchronized, especially when documents get really big. I mean, if you've got a 50-page wireframe and something changes in a common element, you don't want to have to go around changing it all everywhere. You just want it to be intelligent. So things like headers, footers, default kind of content blocks, I tend to make them all as different symbols, and then if they ever change, it's rippled across everywhere. So that's really, really useful. Now we might just put a banner area on the page, so it might be a big kind of hero graphic-y kind of thing. Just make it a little bit varied in shades of grey. I'm going to go back into the common library, just pull in a video player. Forgot to mention earlier, you can actually download, there's plenty of places on the web where you can actually pull in more elements for your wireframe. Very useful. I just realised why that iPhone was so big as well. That's because I guess these are all Retina graphic sizes, so they're kind of double sized to give you the proper Retina resolution. That's just come to my mind. So let's carry on making a few more adjustments to this. We might want to put in some, I tend to just show grey boxes for images. Sometimes I put a cross through them to make it obvious, or I might even use a quick black and white photo. So I'm pressing Alt again just to repeat these. So we're going to have some featured elements down here. I'm going to put in some text. Now, usefully, Fireworks comes with a lorem ipsum generator. I would recommend, let's put it up there. I would recommend that actually, you put real content in where you can, but for the purposes of this, let's just use the generator. So I've created a text element with the text tool over on the left, and I've gone to commands, text, lorem ipsum. Again, there are extensions for giving you much greater control of lorem ipsum, producing a certain number of bullet points or paragraphs, that kind of thing, which can be useful. So let's just quickly do a little bit more on this. So we've got some feature boxes. I might just sometimes I specifically just label what these things are. Let's put a heading in. Again, I fully advocate proper content rather than dummy content for this kind of stuff. This gives you a, oops, didn't press Alt. Just for demonstration, this will be fine. Okay, I'm going to leave it there as this is getting a bit long, and next time we'll create some more pages and create some more symbols to ripple across our wireframe site and start linking things together. Okay, see you next week.